Are you tired of making so many decisions? Does the idea of cooking and cleaning one time a week interest you? Are you looking to free up some mental space so you can focus on what really matters most to you? If you're ready to dive into the world of meal prep but want guidance on where and how to start, you're in the right place. Maybe you're seeking new and innovative ideas for healthy meal prep to spice up your routine and you're not new to this. Or maybe you're aiming for health and fitness milestones and curious if meal prep aligns with your goals. Or you're looking for a sustainable lifestyle change through a meal prep rather than quick fix diets or detoxes. Or maybe you're hoping to cut costs by spending less on takeout every week. Whether you're a beginner looking for a starting point or a seasoned pro in search of fresh inspiration, join me as we delve into the world of healthy meal prep. Discover how meal prep can align with your health and fitness goals, provide sustainable lifestyle changes, and even save you money. If any of these sound like you, welcome to the Meal Prep Perspective. I'm Lisa, a New Yorker deeply rooted in the health and fitness world. Through nutrient-dense, high-protein meal prep, I fuel my active lifestyle without the constraints of food rules. Living in New York City and working in the health industry, I found that meal prep not only saves me time and money, but also clears mental space, allowing me to focus on my mission, empowering others through preventative health practices like strength training and nutrition coaching. Meal prep isn't just a routine for me, it's a passion. I believe in sharing my authentic journey, offering insights into my process, and learning alongside my incredible community. I use my master's degree in public health nutrition from NYU to stay up to date on nutrition recommendations for both individuals and populations. There's endless nutritional misinformation and fear-mongering around nutrition, so I'll help you sort through the noise. If you ask a question and I don't have the exact perfect answer to give you, I'll research it and I'll circle back to update you so we both have the correct information. Your comments, questions, and presence mean the world to me since we're on this journey together. And with that, let's dive in. This has hands down gotta be one of the best weeks of meal prep I've ever made in the history of me doing this. Yep, I said that, and yes, I mean it. This was an epic week of meal prep. I started with chopping up my potatoes for dinner. I'll be roasting these little guys and pairing them with what might be the best meatloaf I've ever made, ever. I'll add some olive oil on top and also some of this spice mix that my sister made. She made a roasted Italian herb salt, I think is what she called it. In the mix was sea salt, garlic, dill, rosemary, sage thyme, lemon zest, and the most important ingredient, love. She really knocked it out of the park with this one, so props to Eustace. Shout out for this really delicious salt mix. I'm kind of obsessed with it, if I'm being honest. It's so good. My sister's also a stellar chef and she's always bringing me new ideas and inspiration, and it's so fun that we get to share that even though we live so far apart. Although that doesn't stop me from constantly trying to convince her and my brother-in-law and their cutie dog to move here. That would be my dream come true, so wish me luck. I'll add some fresh ground black pepper on top as well as some crushed red pepper flakes just for a little bit more spice. While I was doing this, I also decided the next time I make potatoes like this, I'm definitely going to do them Greek style, like Greek lemon potatoes. Doesn't that sound so good and refreshing? Maybe that's something I could grill. See, I'm even inspiring myself while I'm cooking something already. And that reminds me of a new meaning to the ABCs. Well, actually adding one, ABCD, which is always be connecting dots, or some people say always be collecting data, but both of them have a really similar meaning. Always be connecting dots comes from Danny Myers, who is really like the restaurant guy in New York. He has so many successful restaurants and also has really incredible hospitality practices. And if you've ever been to one of his restaurants firsthand, you know instantly how warm and welcoming and kind the staff are. Truly my favorite dining experience in New York. If we're eating out, that's where I want to go. And that brings me back to the ABCDs. So the way that becomes relevant to meal prep here is just being on the lookout for inspiration, for things you want to make, wherever that inspiration comes from. Maybe it comes from your favorite YouTuber, Lovely by Lisa, shameless plug, and you're taking things that I make and you're making them your own. You're making them the way you like to prepare them. And especially even when you're cooking yourself, of like, the next time I make this, I'll do this. And I was over at a friend's house the other day and they made this and I could make it similarly, but you know, sometimes it's just keeping track of all of those ideas so that when it comes time to cook, you're not like, what am I gonna make? What works really well for me is I have a note on my phone that I'm constantly adding to, and I also take screenshots of things that I think could be relevant for me, and then that way I can just look back in my screenshot folder and kind of see all of those things that are relevant. And I want to know, what do you do to keep track of all of this stuff for you? What works, what doesn't? Comment below so that you can help out me or anyone else who's watching here too. What do you guys do that works? I want to know what works for you. All right, so More thoughts on that in a second, but I am going to explain what I've done so far, which isn't too much. But I got my container of feta cheese and I wanted to crumble it really, really small because this is the base of my meatloaf. So I think this is what made it so delicious is I took this mirepoix mix as well and I chopped this up like teeny tiny. Honestly, I could have just probably done this in my food processor, so that would have gone, or blender or whatever, that would have made it, you know, even faster. But I'm chopping this up really fine and small, and I'm going to add it into this feta mixture, and that's really going to be the base for my meatloaf. So I'll continue doing that. So yes, always be connecting dots or always be collecting data. And the other thing I'll share too about connecting dots is I recently was told about this Steve Jobs quote when he was speaking at Stanford's commencement. He was the keynote speaker, and he says, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference." And how beautiful is that? To me, it's a great reminder that we don't always know why we're doing something, or we're questioning why this, why now, and chances are the dots will connect down the road. So to tie the two together, you have to be willing to connect dots. You have to be willing to collect them and then to connect them too. So just a sweet reminder to be on the lookout for all the dots. Now back to cooking. You'll see that I finally chopped everything, teeny tiny, mince everything, and I'm going to do the same thing with the garlic. So in the bowl, to recap, feta crumbled very small, and mirepoix, onions, carrots, celery, and now I'm going to add a whole head of garlic. Now that the garlic's in, I'm going to mix this up really well so all of these ingredients get mixed together and will be evenly distributed through the meatloaf. I like to do this when I make meatloaf or meatballs. That way things don't get too tough if you add the meat in while you're doing all this. I know some people do that. For me, I just don't like it as much. I feel like it makes the meat, it makes it a little tough. So I like to just mix it before, and you get this really beautiful veggie mix in this case. So I'm going to add some more of that roasted garlic salt that my sister made me, and I'm also going to add some pepper in as well. And the other reason that I like to add the meat last too is for the seasoning component. So let's say in this instance, feta is pretty salty for some people, for others not as salty. And I add a little bit of salt in here too and some pepper, but say that I wanted to taste this to see if it was the right flavor for what I want to make. If I don't add the meat in at once, I can give this a little taste and see like, do I need more salt or was that enough? Remember, you can always add more. So always start off with just a little and you can add some more too. So now I'm going to get my ground turkey and ground chicken in here too. Use the mix that you like. Personally for me, these are both pretty lean meats, which is important to me. I want lean protein and protein forward meals since both my husband and I are super athletic and are moving around a lot. So trying to hit these protein goals is no joke, and keeping these meats lean leaves room for other nutrients from other sources too. Now that my protein's in, I'm going to gently mix these things together, mix all these together. You can see I start off with my hands and I switch back to the spoon, then I go with my hands, but I'm just always careful to incorporate this and not feel like I'm like packing it all together or like really like smashing and smushing it together. So I'll do that. I'll make sure everything's well mixed and we'll be on to the next. And voila, everything's well incorporated and mixed together. I'm washing my hands and then I'll come back and I'll spray olive oil in my containers. Definitely don't forget this step. I've forgotten before, and on the glass, they get a little stuck. So don't forget, use some kind of nonstick spray. I suppose if you wanted to, you could fold up little parchment papers. I don't know why I've never done that before. Interesting. Maybe for another time. I'll get these portioned out and into the oven they'll go. I'll clean the counter with some Lysol spray to kill all those meat germs, and then we'll be on to the next part of meal prep. And that reminds me of a new meaning to the ABCs. Well, actually adding one, ABCD. All right, next we're moving on to one of the lengthier activities. I'm gonna get my green squash cut up. These are gonna roast in the oven. They're gonna take some time to roast. I know that, so I wanna get them in and going and started so I can keep moving with lunch. So I'm gonna cut these into, I guess they're like little planks. There's a word for that, right? Does anyone know it? I'm gonna cut these up into like thin little planks, not matchsticks. Someone tell me what that is called when you see what I do. I'm gonna get these cut up. I'll get some olive oil, some of that roasted garlic salt on these two, and I'll get these into the oven so we can keep moving. Since these didn't all fit on my sheet pan, I'm going to keep going and cutting them up so the cutting portion's just done. And then I'll move on to the next activity, which is going to include cutting up some yellow bell peppers. So next I'll get my peppers diced up. I'm going to put them in a bowl in the fridge because I'm not quite ready to use them yet. So I'll keep them fresh and cold. Now that these are in the fridge, I'm pulling out of the fridge. Dun da da da. What do I have? Basil. My summer obsession, my warm weather, actually my any weather obsession, let's be honest. If you ask my husband, he knows. He'll tell you this gal always wants basil, always wants pesto, you name it. So I'm rinsing my basil off. I washed it and then I'm drying it, and I'm going to use it to make my most favorite pesto. I know some chefs prefer to blanch their basil or their like green herbs, but for me, I'm not really bothered by the
you know, throughout the week it won't be as bright green as it was right when I make it here today, but if that matters to you, go ahead and blanch your basil. So for me, I'll get started with getting my pine nuts into my food processor, and I'm going to process those very first before I add anything else. Now that it's off the blender, I'll scrape down the sides, and then I'm going to add in some pistachio. I decided to add these in. I forgot that I had pistachios, and I love pistachios, so I'm going to add these in here, and I think next time I'm going to do all pistachio and try it out. When it comes to pistachio, I'll be eternally chasing this meal in my mind that my family and I had in Florence, Italy, and this pistachio pasta was unlike any pasta I've ever had. I've never had a pasta like it before, and it is truly one my family still talks about to this day. So you can bet that the next time I'm back in Florence, which probably needs to be ASAP, I'll be having the pistachio pasta from La Terrazza del Principe. It's on the hills behind the Boboli Garden, and it is one of my most favorite places in the whole world. And on that note, if you ever want any recommendations for Florence or Italy in general, I've spent a ton of time there, and I've also spent a lot of time in France, all over France, so let me know. Okay, so back to pistachio pesto. So I also got my pistachios in there. I blended them up, I added some lemon, and I'm now going to start adding my basil. I'll also be careful to check if there's any like little basil flowers. I forget the name of that. If you remember the name of it, add it in the comments. That little sprout at the top, I'm just going to pick that off and I'll use it for something else. And then I'll add in some olive oil, me of a new salt, meaning pepper, and I'll get this onto the food processor, actually adding one onto the next step. I will add cheese to this pesto, so I'll set my quattro formaggio onto the side and I'll add it in at the end. I'll come back to my container. I can see that I need some more olive oil. One day I'll buy a much bigger food processor, and this will all go a lot smoother and a lot faster, but for now we're doing it in batches. So add some more olive oil and we'll blend it up again just to get those leaves moving. Alright, so we're back. Texture's looking so improved. How beautiful. So we'll keep going. We'll add some more basil leaves in and we'll keep moving. I added in some extra olive oil and some quattro formaggi so I can get that onto the blender, and I decided it was time for a little break. A lot of times I do this off camera, but I'm starting to show y'all some of my more behind the scenes things, which I think you like, but let me know if you don't because I can edit them out. But yes, this health and fitness girly is drinking a Diet Coke. There's, from what we understand about the nutritional science right now, there's nothing wrong with Diet Coke, diet sodas. They're fine. And literally, unless you're drinking, I think the number's like 200, 300 of these a day. You're not going to see a negative impact. And that's because the dose makes the poison. Let me know if you want to know more about this. We can talk more about it. Happy to share more about it. And we'll get back. I'm giving my pesto a little taste. It's so good. Honestly, I could eat this by the spoonful. And honestly, it could use just a little more salt. I always err on the side of adding way too little salt because you can always add more. And I'll also add some more olive oil and get the rest of those leaves in there. I also added another clove of garlic. I just wanted a little more punch and a little more kick, and then we'll keep moving. I also remembered I wanted to add some lemon zest in here too. I definitely meant to do that on the first lemon I added in and I just forgot. So we'll add some lemon zest as well, and that'll just give this a little more like punch and flavor too. I did just pull a very large stem out of here, but other than that, this beauty is done. I wish all of you could taste this right now. It's so delicious, and hopefully now you're craving pesto too. Even just editing this now, I want pesto again. See how that works? I'll give it a final taste test. Yep, torture me, make me taste it again, right? And I decided to add in a little bit more cheese just because I wanted to take it to the next level and also to help it go just a little further too. I threw those last few leaves in there, those little baby ones. Sometimes I'll save them and I'll do a little topping on for presentation purposes. And I also added in some crushed red pepper flakes and last spin on the food processor blender, and then we're gonna call this sauce almost done. I know, it's a process. Alright, so I'll get that into the fridge, clean up a little bit, and then out of the oven comes my very first round of my green squash. I'll get those flipped over. I just want to make sure they're getting roasted to the ABCs. Well, actually adding one, A, B, C, D. Caramely, like that one I just flipped over. So beautiful. I did switch to tongs before I burned my fingers. Sometimes I just go for it, but this must have been really hot. And then they'll go back into the oven. And now we're moving on to breakfast. I have these little sausages. I'm going to defrost them in the microwave first, and then I'm going to move on. I'm going to get my yellow peppers that I cut earlier out of the fridge, and I'll get my sheet pan ready because I'm going to do some sheet pan eggs. Now that my peppers are onto my sheet pan, I'm going to chop up my little sausage patties. I'm going to chop them up really small. I want to make them teeny tiny, and then that way I can also make just these two feel like they're going a long way in breakfast for 2 adults. So if I had more of these, I would have used probably more of them if I'm thinking about it, but since I only had 2, I'm just kind of making them smaller, and then it'll kind of feel like every bite has a little piece of sausage in it. So I'll get this distributed, and then I'm gonna get my eggs out of the fridge. I'm gonna scramble them up, adding some salt and pepper, and then this is going into the oven to bake. My mini meatloaves and potatoes are cooling on the oven, and I'm going to transfer them to cool on the counter. I always put down a towel just because I'm a little paranoid and don't want to ruin my countertop. So I'll get this transferred onto the counter, and then we're on to the next. I'm going to roast the remaining green squash. I'll get them situated onto my sheet pan, spray them with olive oil, and add the same seasonings I added to the other ones. You might be wondering what's going on the other half of this sheet pan, and you'll never probably guess what it is. I am making impossible sausages made from plants. So this is not meat. This is an alternative to meat, still high in protein, made from plants. And I've had these before and they were very good. But the reason that I bought them was they were on sale at the grocery store. They didn't expire anytime soon. I don't know if they just were having a sale or something, but I think they were on sale for $3 a package, which they're usually way more than that. So that's why I usually don't buy them, but I do like them. And these had really, really good flavor. So I'm putting those into the oven, and then I'm grabbing my other sheet pan of roasted squash, and I'll distribute those into my meal prep containers. And that reminds me of a new meaning to the ABCs. Well, actually adding one, ABCD. Next up in the process, we're adding boiling water using my kettle trick. So I found that for large boiling water things that it boils a lot faster if I'm using some water that's already got a head start in my kettle. So I do that sometimes to give it a little head start. So I'll do that. I'll add some salt to my water, and then I'll also take my sheet pan out, give my sausages a flip over, and put those back in the oven. I'm using this protein pasta. I know it's not an incredible amount of protein, so I'm not going to consider it a protein source. It's still a carb source, but it does have some more protein than regular pasta. So thumbs up for me. I'm going to take my sheet pan eggs out of the oven too. I'm going to sprinkle them with some pepper jack cheese, and then back into the oven they go, just to melt that cheese a little bit. Then they'll come back out of the oven and we'll consider these done for now. My pasta is just boiling away, and remember how I said my pesto wasn't completely done? That's because I'm going to add some pasta water to my pesto. Any Italian chef, I know I'm generalizing, will say if you're going to do a sauce like this, you want to add some pasta water there. So you want some of those starches in your sauce. It'll really help it bind onto your pasta. So I'll add a generous amount here, and I'll blitz that back onto the blender food processor. I could do this by hand, but since it's still in the blender cup, I'll make my life a little bit easier. I'll get my giant bowl out, strain my pasta, and then I'll get my pesto onto my sauce right away. I always cautiously open my blender if there's anything warm inside, just in the case of, I don't know if you've ever opened a warm blender before, but sometimes it splatters, and that is dangerous and not fun. So be careful there. If you know me, you know there's no sauce left behind. I scraped the blade off and the bowl, so we got all the pasta and pesto together in our bowl, and how beautiful. You can see in my face, it makes me so happy. It's so fresh and delicious. I mean, come on. Beautiful. I'll get this portioned into my meal prep containers, and I also decided to rearrange my squash a little bit too, so I moved it on top of my pasta, but that's really just my own organizational OCD. I'll move that over onto my pasta, and I'll get these portioned out. There's a little noodle left in the bowl for this chef. Taking a bite, and wow, so delicious. Truly, pasta, pesto, happiness. Is it that simple? I wish. Now that my sheet pan eggs are cooled off, I'm gonna get them sliced and into my meal prep containers, and I'll show you how I serve them. Out of the fridge, I'm grabbing some tortillas because I'm making sheet pan egg breakfast burritos. I love this idea. Thanks to one of my subscribers for asking for this idea. I know a lot of other creators do like make ahead breakfast burritos in the freezer situation. That's not necessarily my jam, but here's my take on a breakfast burrito. Really, all I did was nestle my sheet pan eggs inside my tortilla, and I added some avocado on some of the mornings too because I had some fresh avocados. So I added some avocado and some hot sauce, and that really took it to the next level for these. It was super enjoyable, and even more grateful right now for me that I'm getting to eat breakfast at home in the sunshine nonetheless. Guys, I've been eating breakfast in the dark for so many years. I can't even tell you how much it means to me to stand in my kitchen in the sunshine eating breakfast in peace. I'm so grateful. Look at the joy, right? And by eating breakfast in the dark, I mean eating breakfast at like 5 a.m. before I leave for work, or eating at work when it's still dark out. So really thankful for that right now. This is my life and I'm so grateful. So I'll fold up my tortillas into my meal prep container just for the first day, because I'm going to add it in fresh every day so that everything stays really fresh, because the water content of these would be really different. I don't want anything to get moldy or to go bad. And that reminds me of a new meaning to the ABCs. Part one of breakfast is already my sausages are cooling, and I'm going to set them to the side for now while I restock my oatmeal. I'm going to show you guys this is how I do it, and I'll use the oats that are in my container first. So I'll get those into my meal prep containers, and then we'll keep moving. So I know y'all want to see more of my process. So this is part of my process, and part of what, kind of like staying on top of everything means to me. It's like, if I know that I'm almost out of oats are something I like to keep on hand. I always have in my pantry. I love this giant container. I'll send you the link if you ask for it down below. It got a nice seal on it and has little wheels, which is super convenient, and opens. You can take the entire lid of it off, so you can pour something like this in there easily, and you'll see how I kind of pour most of it in and then stop and pour the rest into. I definitely have this technique down. It's even more interesting to do this with rice. I feel like rice, it's harder to refill a little bit, but yep. So I got that refilled, and we'll keep moving. I'll add some more oats into my husband's breakfast, and then I'll add the next part of my oats. And now we're moving on to the flavor part of our overnight oats. I'm going to do peanut butter and jelly flavored. I'm using powdered peanut butter. Have you guys tried this before? I really like it, especially for overnight oats. I find it's a lot easier to mix in. So I'll get that distributed, and then we'll be on to the next part, the jelly. Out of the fridge, I'm getting my jelly. I made this, I guess that's not really fair to call it jelly. It's like more like homemade jam, chia jam. And I reused a container. One of my clients, shout out to you, Ned, made me almond butter. So on this container, it says Ned's almond butter. And I used it all, but wanted to reuse the container. So Ned, if you're watching this, thank you so much. Your almond butter was mwah, chef's kiss, incredible. And when I reuse this jar, I think of you every time too. Thanks. Also take a second to brag about my clients. They're the best. Seriously, I've always had the best clients. And I always feel so lucky and grateful and thankful to know such kind, generous people. I started mixing things up and then remembered I should just add water before I try to mix these dry ingredients together with just a little bit of jam. So I'll add my water in, and then I'll keep mixing everything together, and I'll show you how I serve these too. And this is how I served this. I added a large scoop of feta Greek yogurt. I don't know if y'all like Greek yogurt, if you like feta, but this is definitely my favorite one. I really just like this because since it doesn't have any fat in it. It's really just mostly a really great protein source. So I love adding it to something like this. There's protein in my oats. There's a tiny bit of protein in my peanut butter, but this really takes it to the next level to give me that even more of a protein-packed breakfast. All right, and that's it, y'all. We're all done. I'm topping the meatloaf with some hot sauce, and that's a wrap. This chef is ready for a nap. This process can truly be so exhausting, but to me, it's worth all of the pain and suffering on one day, so the rest of the week, my brain can be free. To me, the cost of doing this is never, ever more than the benefit. The benefit always outweighs the cost for me, and it makes it worth it. Thanks so much for joining me on another week of What Did I Meal Prep, and I can't wait to see you again next week. Take care.